I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Teaching While Queer is a podcast for 2S LGBTQ+ educational professionals to share their experiences in academia. Hi, I'm your host, Brian Stanton, a theater pedagogue and educator in New York City, and my goal is to share stories from around the world from 2S LGBTQ+ educators. I hope you enjoy Teaching While Queer. And welcome to another episode of Teaching While Queer. I am your host, Brian Stanton, and I'm so excited today to have Annabel Flemate. Is that correct, or did I say your name incorrectly?
It's Flemate, but that is quite all right. I get that a lot.
I'm sure. It's so funny because I have a degree in opera performance, so I learned how to say a lot of different languages. And so my instinct is always to go towards pronouncing it in a different language, and then so many years in Texas kind of beat that out of me. So I got to get back in the groove.
Okay, yeah, no worries. That happens.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Alrighty, so my name is Annabelle. I go by she, they, and I am a TK to kindergarten teacher. I do assist in different classes as well. So I do also help out with sign language and or Spanish. And to be honest, sign language is one of my big passions, and that's a lot of the reason why I teach, just to create a welcoming and overall big community environment for all students.
I love that so much. I have a huge passion for sign language, but not enough time to learn it. It's been on my bucket list of things to learn for, I swear, a decade. And I'll start a class and then I'll get overwhelmed with other things going on in my life, and then I just, it's something I want to pick up one day because I've just been so fascinated with it. And as an artist, I just love how expressive the language is.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
There's 7 different key reasons why sign language is a language and stuff. And just the facial expressions alone, wow, you don't have to say anything, but I can totally tell that you just read me. I can tell,
Absolutely.
What I mean?
It's so funny because as an acting teacher, I talk a lot about how we communicate more through our nonverbal communication, what we do with our body, what we do with our face.
Very true.
When you look at the deaf community, you can see that so clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just one of those things that I love. It's a great it's a great resource, I think, for anybody who wants to learn about what your face gives away, because I have that conversation, I swear, almost weekly with my daughter. I don't know that what you said matches what your face is trying to tell me, so just maybe think about how that looks.
I love that. That's too funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Awesome. So you're a pre-K TK teacher. So let's start by taking a journey back in time and talk about what your experience was like as a queer student.
Sure. To be honest, at first I had no idea what was going on. I just knew I was different, but I just didn't know how or in what way. But growing up, I owe seriously everything to my teachers. Without any of my teachers, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I truly owe everything to them. They helped me. They saw me when I was struggling, even at a young age. They really sought me out and they said, "Hey, I'm gonna help you." I struggled too, speaking English as well. So I spoke a lot of Spanglish in first grade and stuff like that. So it was a bit challenging, and I did get held back, and I felt very bad about it, and ashamed, but looking back at it, I know that my teachers were making the right calls and just wanting me to succeed. So that's ultimately also why I became a teacher, was because they helped me at some of my lowest and most important points in life. And just I owe so much to teachers. So yay, all teachers.
Yay, teacher. I love it. I especially love your conversation with regard to the fact that like you were an English language learner and how that's an added stress just to normal school day.
Oh yes,
Um,
100%. I'll be like, oh my gosh, how do I say this word? I don't know, so I'll say it in Spanish. And luckily I did have a really good support system. My parents as well. They helped as much as they could, but really, teachers, awesome, swear.
I love that. One of the things that I've done over the years is just kind of freshen up my skills on how I can support English language learners because as I've gone through different schools, there are different populations. So it's not enough to say, like, oh, I learned Spanish so I can help the English language learners. No, it's like
Yes.
at my last school, I swear that I believe that they said there were 32 languages being spoken on the campus. And so it's like you just have to be comfortable
hmm
knowing what resources to use so that you can better help all of your students.
Truly, truly, that is exactly also one of the reasons why I did sign language as well, is because I noticed, especially with the pandemic as well, I've noticed a lot of the kids that I've been encountering, coming into my class, they're having a little bit of like speech delay or speech issues, which is, very normal, especially at this age. But I just feel like, someone should really do a study. Someone, I don't know who, but someone should definitely do a study on that. I've noticed that they're able to pick up sign language quicker, and it's something that is really, it's much easier for them to absorb. A lot of nonverbal cues, things like that really help. So that's also a big reason why I teach sign language in my classroom. It's so beneficial. I wish everybody could learn it, seriously.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's such a great thing for like parents because your
Oh,
toddler wants to be able to communicate with you, but they might not know, like, they don't have the vocabulary yet. So, like, I remember signing with my daughter and speaking English and sometimes speaking Spanish because I learned, like, if you throw little nuggets at people, especially when it comes to
mm-hmm.
language when they're younger, that it creates more of an adaptable brain that allows you to learn language as you grow older. And
This is
so
very true.
I was sitting there going, I'm going to speak to you in French and I'm going to speak to you in Spanish. And we learned to count in 4 different languages and we learned to count in sign language. And she knew how to say more and food and all of these things to try to communicate just like from the toddler age. So it's such a cool thing that you're doing because you're really providing them with this ability to just communicate. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part about toddlerhood and the most frustrating part about parenting a toddler.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I agree.
Awesome. So, what has your journey been like? You go by
Oh,
she they pronouns.
hmm
So, how did you kind of come into your identity?
Oh, that's a good question. The way that I kind of came into my identity is I knew going into it that I was something. I didn't know what I was exactly. Uh, but moving, honestly, it all started happening when I moved. I moved from Los Angeles over to the Bay Area, and that's kind of when I started to discover a little bit of my footing. So at first, like growing up as a kid, I thought like, oh, like I shouldn't be thinking of people like that or anything like that or having feelings for the same sex or things like that. But once I moved to the Bay, I was like, this is what I was feeling. I understand now. I think also just having a community and being seen in a community and having that there and feeling safe, I think is a huge key. And kind of just being in the community and having a good support system out here really helped me find who I am and my true authentic self. So I always tell everyone, if you feel you're nerdy, if you feel like you're just super exciting person or things like that, just be yourself. At the end of the day, be your authentic true self. Because if you're not going to be your true authentic self, it only at the end is going to really hurt you and what you really want and need in your life. So that's even what I tell my kids, if one of the kids doesn't want to play this, but everybody else is doing it, I'm just like, why don't you go do what you want to do? That is totally fine. You don't have to play tag. You could read a book, things like that. So just being your true authentic self, and that stems all the way definitely from like childhood and things like that. So I say, encourage your children if they really want to learn about sign language, or if they really want to wear like a dress, or if they really want to color their hair purple, of course you can get like the ones that come off, can be permanent, but do things like that. They're kids. They need all of this warmth and love and acceptance, because if you don't give that to them now, I know down the line in the future, those big things are going to impact them in a way that you will never even know. I'm sorry, I'm really just passionate about that.
No, I understand entirely because I've had situations pop up in my own life where I didn't realize how impactful certain things were until I was an adult, and
Yes.
my behaviors on certain things, like I've been afraid of public displays of affection and like PDA forever. And it
Oh.
stems from like two things, right? Because there's this like idea of masculinity, where masculinity is saying that like public displays of affection are feminine and bad. And then also like being a queer person, like you have the potential
Yeah.
of being like hurt, and like
Mm-hmm.
and just me recalling comments that people made when I was younger about like other queer people and how it was a negative thing, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize how much I took of that into myself until I was experiencing things and going like, why can't I hold my husband's hand in public? Why do I have such
Mm-hmm.
a problem with this?
Mm-hmm.
um so really, like parents out there, we got to be cautious about the things that we say and how we respond, because you're absolutely correct. We can create a lifelong impact without even realizing that, like some offhanded thing we said.
100%. So I'm sorry, I have a quick story because you said that. Growing up in like a Latino household and stuff, a big thing that like just even talking about like food or things like that, even just the slightest little comments that you may think are funny and stuff, that will impact your child so much. They will remember that. I assure you 1,000%. So just, be kind to your kids, even if you're like joking around, or you're going to say like, oh, you're going to get another one or whatever. Let them. They're growing kids. They need the energy anyways, So just be mindful, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. I don't know where I read this, but about basically like your kids' self-talk comes from what you say to them. And
A
so that
hundred
negative
percent.
self-talk of like, ugh, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm this, that, and the other, comes from things that they've been told, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just kind of internalize that. So yeah, we've got to be cautious and very careful about how we refer, um
To
with our
ourselves, to our bodies,
yeah.
everything, really, yes.
Also, like I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like in the modern society, parents, grandparents, like aunts and uncles, like maybe just don't talk about people's bodies anymore. Like,
Yes,
can
seriously.
we just get off of that? Like, you don't need
It's
to
like,
comment on my body, you don't need to
yeah,
comment on me. It's completely
seriously.
inappropriate.
The two things sometimes that I get are like, oh, how are you doing? Do you have a boyfriend yet? I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again.
Yeah, I have distinct memories of really hating going to the orthodontist, because every time I
Oh,
went in there, he would ask if I had a girlfriend, and I'm like,
oh,
I hate being here. I like really hate it. And it's not
yeah,
just because you're my dentist, it's because you're asking these kind of relatively intrusive questions.
exactly. And you're like, I think there might be a cavity, dude. I
Right? Like, can we do the job at hand, please?
don't know. Yeah.
So you work in TK pre-K age, which is like, for
Mm-hmm.
those folks who are maybe unfamiliar, it's like anywhere ranging from like 3 to 5
About,
range.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
that's correct.
And that's a very hard area right now with all the controversy happening in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. Um, have you ever had to deal with like anti-queer behavior because you're working with young children?
So actually, but I am very thankful that I have not had to encounter any situation like that yet. But I very am well equipped and prepared for that. Inside my classroom, also, it's not a secret. Everyone in the community there knows that I'm gay, and the directors have my back, like, so if anything, any kind of issue I face, I would just go directly to them. Same with the teachers. I'm very open with like my sexuality and who I am as a person. So even the parents, which I was very surprised and very happy and proud of these sets of parents because they asked me on the first day, they're like, oh, like, what are your pronouns? And that was the first time in my entire like years of teaching, which is only 7, but that someone has asked me that, and I I had a smile that lit up the room because no one has ever done that or even asked, and I just really value and appreciate that. And also in my classroom, I have a lot of first conversation books as well. I have first conversation books about gender, about race, about bodies, different things because it's so important and vital to incorporate this to our children so they know and they're prepared for when they get older, as well as just having like diverse books, having like some in Spanish, some in English, some in Mandarin, the more the better. It's not going to harm them. It's not.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because one of my previous guests, their episode actually will be airing a couple weeks right after we have this interview.
Hmm.
But they run queer kids stuff on YouTube and Instagram and wrote a book about parenting and teaching like gender and sexual orientation and identity and whatnot to like kids of all ages. And they get constantly bombarded by people just because of the fact that they're willing to have a conversation with young people that in an age appropriate way. And it's not like, you know, we're having conversations about sex
Yes,
with a
exactly.
3-year-old. We're having conversations about relationships. We're having conversations about knowing yourself.
And
Um,
consent as well, like such big,
that's
vital,
the big
important
one.
things. And I know it's baffling to me how someone who wants to teach and help and change the world and make it a better place is getting so much backlash for something that is actually going to help so many children and in the future too. So to that person, keep doing what you're doing and don't stop, Haters gonna hate, but whatever. Sorry,
Absolutely.
it's a
No,
you
you're
can edit
good.
that part
I'm
out.
sure that no, I'm sure that they will appreciate that. I will let them know for sure.
Okay.
Um, so you mentioned that you have several like first conversation books. What
Oh,
does a
yes.
first conversation book look
Oh,
like?
okay. Oh, gee, dang, I didn't bring it today, but it's published by Penguin House, and I do have the name of the author. I only have one of the authors, but there's 3. But it's by Megan Madison, and it's a Penguin Publishing House book, and it just talks about like about how we love each other in general. It talks about how you love your mom and dad, and how other people love different people and genders, and that's okay. It shows in the book. I like this book specifically because of the pictures that they incorporate. They have people of different races and different genders and different, like, they even have some with children who are wearing like dresses or that are boys, and that's totally fine. Imagination play, all that stuff, so vital and so important. And I mean, I recommend, if any new parents or parents are watching this or listening to this, highly recommend the first conversation books. Those help you clear out so many difficult questions that parents might have in the future. And what I like about this book is it gives you a lot of topics in the back, from a doctor as well, who kind of has the better language than me to describe like certain methods and ways of teaching, like about gay, bisexuality, and stuff like that. So, and I think that's so helpful because that was not there when I was a kid at all, and I
Oh,
was just
absolutely not.
don't know what's going on. Yeah,
So then we're left with like no vocabulary. And so I love that
exactly.
there's this vocabulary kind of being built for young people to be able to kind of
Hmm.
figure out who
And
they
understand.
are.
Yes, yes, truly.
I love that. I know about a year ago or so, a friend shared a TikTok with me that was someone reading the book My Shadow is Purple, which is another picture book that kind of talks about like a non-binary identity, but it uses shadows as kind of like the way
Ooh,
to
the
talk
way
about
to,
it, and I thought it was super cool because
that's very
it's
clever. I like that.
objective, but it showed this person's shadow transforming into more feminine, and then it
Oh,
transformed into do more masculine things, and it likes to do both things, and it doesn't have to have
oh my
a
gosh, I love that.
specific like blue or pink. It's purple.
Oh
And so
wow,
I loved seeing how creative young young writers are getting for
writers.
young kids,
Oh yes, it's
because
amazing.
everybody wants, well, not everybody, but a lot of people think it's a hard conversation to have, but
I,
really you
it's
can
not.
break anything down into easy manageable chunks for kids.
And 9 times out of 10, what the child will say is when you give the answer is, "Oh, okay," and go about their day. And it's more like the adult is making it more of a bigger deal than the child, you know?
Absolutely.
And you're
Absolutely.
like,
It's funny
okay.
because when I hear people who are like, well, I would want to have this conversation with my kid when it's appropriate for their age. And I'm just sitting there like, your kid probably just went back to like tying their shoes or whatever. Like the conversation was over and it
Yeah,
was
it's done
done.
now. Yeah.
Everybody wants to make it like a huge deal. I talk about that all the time when it comes to pronouns too.
Hmm.
Like I love that somebody asked you your pronouns, because I think a lot of people forget that teachers are humans,
Yes,
um,
truly.
and that like we need to be cared for too.
Hmm.
And so I love that someone went out of the way, this group of parents went out of their way to ask you what your
Hmm.
pronouns are. But like, I would say that there's so many people who think like the pronoun conversation is such a huge conversation. I'm like, it's one question, one day of the school year.
Hmm.
Why are we making it such a big deal? And most of the time, it's an optional question. So like,
Truly.
it's wild to me how it's turned into such a big deal when it's literally like, this question takes 3.5 seconds out of my entire school year. So
Hmm.
maybe we just calm down and not worry about it so much.
Truly, I'm just like, okay, let's go back to what we're here for, the work of your child, or what's going on here. Yeah, it is. But
Absolutely.
but like I said, I have been fortunately very blessed with like a really good community. I haven't faced any kind of issues like that, and knock on wood, hopefully it won't. But if I do, I'm ready. I got my cue cards.
Got your cue cards. Okay, so just a question. Like, you've prepared for this. What are some things that you might say to somebody? This might help
Well,
somebody else who's in this situation.
actually, so it's funny. I would give them one of my first conversation books and sit them down. And because, I mean, if they're going to question that, then they do need a little bit of education. And, who better to do it than me, Teacher Annabelle, with all the first conversation books. So I would sit them down and I would have a conversation with them and just be like, hey, this is how I am being represented, in this book. This is who I am. This is how I feel, or things like that. And if they have a problem, I would be like, I understand that have really big, strong feelings and emotions about this, but I assure you that even though my gender or whatever is an issue, I have all the qualifications inside my resume to show otherwise. And just because I go by she, they, doesn't mean that I am any lesser than someone who goes by a Mr. or a Mrs. or anything like that. Because do they know sign language in German and Spanish? Can they do that? Like, how dare you? Well, and so on and so forth. If it turns into a heated battle, then I'll be like, we'll go to the director. But I mean, that it's true. It's just, I will educate you. I will sit you down if I have to. If the parents, and honestly, I have even talked to my director. If parents do have a issue or want to know more, like I would be more than happy to host like a out night at my school and just kind of just give them a little bit of background information on like what these things mean and why we need to be respectful of it and just be kind and be nice human beings, It's not that hard, everybody.
Really don't understand why that's such a hard concept. Like, we just need to be nice human beings. So that, because I feel like it's in the playbook as a parent that you teach your kids to be nice, And then it just,
Hmm.
I don't know, somewhere gets thrown out the window where, adults are allowed to be mean, but kids have to be nice. Um,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
it's such an interesting double standard, because I feel like if you look at it from a religious aspect, every major religion on this planet has some sort of like treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally called the golden rule for a reason, and it exists like unilaterally
Yes,
in every major
everybody. Yes.
religion.
It really is funny, I just think it's ironic, like they talk about like the casting of like the first stone and things like that, and I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on, look at yourself in the mirror right now, you know?
Honestly, it's like, who's throwing the stones? Like, did you see where that stone came from? Because it did not come from me.
Yeah. Oh
It's
man,
wild. So
truly.
you talked a lot already about authenticity. What are some
Hmm.
things that you might tell a brand new teacher or administrator or someone who's jumping into education for the first time, who's
Hmm.
concerned about being authentic or whether or not they should be authentic in the academic setting?
So what I would recommend is when you go to your first day or something like that, go talk to your director. Be open and honest about, look, this is my concern, or this is what I'm concerned about. I really need like assistance if this comes about, which I am 100% like speak up, speak your mind and let it be known, because I I would really hate to see someone get hurt by not speaking up for something that they need. I think being there and having a supportive team and just reaching out to other teachers and and letting them know, I think would help the process a lot. Because a lot of my teachers, like I said, even on hard days, I think they just really get you through. And even like my teachers will ask me like, "Oh, how was Pride this year?" or things like that. And it's nice to have that environment as well of being your true authentic self at work too, you know?
Absolutely. I would echo that, and also just say that there's no shame in asking that question during the interview as well. Like, how
Mhm.
would you handle this situation? Because ultimately, we need to make sure we're in a safe environment where we can be authentic. There's nothing worse, I think, than having
Uh,
to live a lie.
a hundred
Um,
percent.
and so I just think that whether it's your first day working or whether it is at the job interview, I had a
Mhm.
job interview today for a university, and
Ooh.
I was like, I'm coming in pink hair and nose ring and nail polish, and I wore a long button up shirt, but it had stars all over it, and I was like,
Ooh,
here
nice.
I am, like, you're getting the full me, because if I don't feel comfortable in a room with you at this interview, I don't know that I'm going to feel comfortable working for you.
Exactly, that's true. Like I remember when I showed up for my interview, I showed up like in a polka dot rainbow dress. I was ready and roaring to go. I think that's very important, especially for the kids too, for the kids to see that you're being your true self. Children pick up on so many things. They pick up on your energy, they pick up on your body language, everything. You may think just because they're tiny and small that they may not be that observant, but they are 1,000% observant and pick up things really quick. So,
I've seen that, like, in my own life as a parent. I've seen that in the classroom. It's just so common. Kids are picking up on, like, you raised your eyebrows a moment ago. What were you thinking? Or I've had
yeah, you're like,
students
what in the
especially
world?
like, what? I raised my eyebrows. And this goes back to our conversation about the facial expressions.
Yep.
Like, I didn't even know I was sending a signal right now. I was just like in my thoughts. So if we can make like
A scenario?
legislation, or we can
Oh,
make
okay.
an initiative that is going to help um, educational communities make inclusive practices for 2S LGBTQ plus students and be a support for them, what would you like to see? What do you think that educational institutions could do?
they could do so much, but I mean, I know it's a big thing, this bathroom situation, but I mean, honestly, the bathrooms, come on, let's just make them all gender neutral. Come on, I mean, honestly, that would be like the big first step, to
I
be
went to
honest,
a
because I know it's
Broadway
gonna
show.
start there.
Yeah, I went to a Broadway show, and the ushers were literally like, "We have gender neutral bathrooms. Go wherever you want to go. Just be safe." Like, and they've got attendants working in there, handing out paper towels and
Oh,
whatnot.
awesome.
And it's like, yeah, there's a stall there,
Yeah.
and it's so wild to me because again, there's some hypocrisy with this kind of thing because I recall from a school that my daughter attended that there was this huge controversy over a trans student using a bathroom in an elementary school, and it was because other kids looked through the cracks in the stall at this student going to the restroom and discovered that they were transgender, and
Oh,
that
wow.
nobody thought maybe this child needs to respect other people's privacy
That's
as
exactly where I
opposed
was going to.
to like we need to now debate whether or not this other child is allowed to even use the restroom. And for
Yeah.
a while that kid was like escorted to the bathroom and could be the only person in the restroom, and it was like a huge deal, and I'm just sitting here going like,
Wow.
she just wants to pee, like.
Yeah, and then you have to think like we you have to think you're taking time out of another two other people's days to do all this extra work for something that can just be solved and we can all just use the freaking bathroom. Like, oh man.
I also feel like, get with it, America. Like, we could
Yes,
have more
truly.
private restrooms. Like, the
Yes.
stalls don't need to have a crack in it where you can see everything that's going on the inside. Like, we could all just benefit from some more privacy.
Yes, truly.
So,
Truly.
we've talked restrooms. What else would you like to see happen?
I would like to also stop banning all the books that should not be getting banned. Like, what? That's nonsensical. I mean, there's so many important vital books that are on that list that should be in, well, at least everyone should own a copy of at least one of those books. Like, literally leaves me speechless sometimes. I'm just like, what?
I'm baffled because some of the books on the list were like required reading when I was a child. And I was like,
Yes.
so you adults who had to read this book as a teenager are now going like, "Oh, this is inappropriate for my kid." Like, what did it do? It's a
Yeah.
book. Like, it's not going to come attack you with its, diversity.
Watch out. But also, aside from the books, I would also say if there could be like because over at the school that I went to, Indio High School, they were called safe spaces and safe rooms. So any student could go inside that room, talk freely, like about their sexuality, about themselves, things like that, with no judgment. I would love if almost like all the schools would have a safe space, and with a teacher who, I mean, is queer or identifying in the LGBTQ plus community, because truly that makes all the difference, is having that one person sometimes, truly.
I agree. And I also think that, like, that space can be for everybody. So just
Yes,
because it says safe
100%.
space and has a rainbow on it doesn't mean that, like, somebody who's in their feels who identifies as heterosexual can't go in there and, like,
Yes.
have a moment. Like,
Yeah,
it really is for everybody. The signal is to the people who think that they're alone. You know what I mean?
exactly, 100%. Yeah. And I think that was really nice. Or like a Gay Straight Alliance group as well. I think those are very important, you know, and letting like individuals join different sports if they want to be in a different sport.
My son, it's funny because, freshman and sophomore year of football, there was a girl playing football with them. Not an
Hmm.
issue at all. As soon as she was going to jump up to JV or varsity, like, it just stopped. Like, she hit a wall and wasn't allowed to advance on it. And I'm just like,
Wow.
really? Like, she was
Yeah.
doing killer on, the freshman team
Yeah.
and, like, the first year JV team. And now she's getting better where she'll actually, like, play on the better JV team or play on the varsity team. And you're like, no, she can't play. Absolutely
Yeah.
not.
I'm like, hold on, aren't we trying to win? Like, Are
Yeah.
you trying to get the points on the board?
And
Like,
it's so funny in Texas, volleyball is a feminine sport, and I grew up where it's
oh,
like there was boys volleyball and girls volleyball, boys water polo and girls water polo. Like there were boys and girls, pretty much everything except for
mm-hmm.
football, and then softball became,
Oh, mm-hmm.
the equivalent to baseball, which is also mind-boggling to me because I think girls can play baseball. I've seen girls play baseball. I've played
Yeah,
baseball with girls. Like, there's no
yeah,
reason that they
no,
can't
totally.
continue to play baseball.
100%. I'm like, why are you giving me this gigantic yellow frickin' softball to play right now? Oh, the worst.
Yeah, I hate those balls. They're also like way too lightweight. Like it drives me nuts because
Yes.
I played baseball for so long that I'll try to go throw it and then it's like way off kilter because it's a different weight and it's a different size
hmm
and it's just, to me, like, I have played baseball with girls, so it seems so weird that all of a sudden they hit high school and they have to stop playing baseball and they have to play
Play
softball.
softball, yeah. Like, what? Why? Mm.
And that's the thing. It's just like so much of what we do is gendered and it doesn't have to be.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. If we could just scrap that whole idea, just take it back, I totally would, but we just gonna
Absolutely.
have to
We're just
make a
going to have to go
change.
back in time or we're going to have to go into the future. So,
Exactly.
we're putting out we like to put things out on our episodes. We put out research already. Like someone needs to do research on,
Yeah,
communication and whatnot. So, we'll put that out there into the world too. Like we're going to just
just that.
change it.
We
We're going
are.
to
We're gonna make it
change the
better.
world so that it
There we
is
go.
better for everyone. It's
hmm
funny, one of my favorite musicals is an off-Broadway show. Like it never made it to Broadway and I don't think it needs to, but
Ooh.
it's called Xanadont and it's called a fairy tale musical. And it's about a homosexual world. So this is
Ooh.
pre common understanding of like non-binary identity.
Okay.
Um but they're in a homosexual world and these two people find themselves falling in love, but they are heterosexual. And so this person
Ooh.
has magical powers and they can change the whole world to make it accepting of heterosexual people because you cannot use magic to change people. And I think that was beautiful. And
I
then they
love
changed
that.
the world and literally everybody gay bashes him because he stays gay while everybody else now is in some sort of heterosexual coupling. And the only person who remembers the world as it was is the person who becomes his boyfriend. Um, like the two gay people remember the
Yeah.
world as it was,
As it.
but it was so interesting. It's such an interesting commentary on like the idea that when you change the world to be accepting of heterosexual people, it becomes unacceptable to be queer. Whereas when it was unacceptable to be heterosexual, like people weren't getting bashed per se, but
hmm
it was just harder to be yourself. And so I think it's such an interesting commentary on just like how divided things are, like where it has to be this or that, black or white. And I feel like so much of
Truly.
the world is like it's technicolor. There's so many different things that we can do that are in between what we think is this or that. I guess
I
that's why I'm
agree. And
not
also,
binary. I don't believe in binaries, period. Black
there you
or
go.
white, no thank you.
Also, I am definitely gonna have to check that out because I love musicals.
Yeah, it stars Jay Rodriguez from the original Queer
Ooh.
Eye for the Straight Guy, so that was
Okay,
fun too. Like it's a cute little nod. And some of my
okay.
favorite people who have went on to Broadway. So it's a super fun.
Awesome.
It's super cute. It is not appropriate for I think under high school
Oh, dang.
because they
Okay.
do because
Oh.
it's based in a high school and for some reason
Oh.
in the imagination world of high school and like media, high schoolers are a lot more sexually active than not. Like whether it's film, television, musicals, like I'm just sitting there going
Yeah.
like I work with high schoolers and gosh, I hope that this stuff isn't happening the way you're saying it is because that would be weird.
That'd be like wowzers right there.
Exactly. Excuse me. All right, so before we wrap up, I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask me a question, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
Okay, well, geez, man. All right, let me see. I guess my main question, unless somebody already asked this, I don't think they did, but why did you start this podcast?
Oh, sure. This is an ever evolving question because the more I think about this
Okay,
question, the
okay.
more like I find things and the better words to say. So
I understand.
a couple of years ago, I had toyed with this idea and I talked to my husband about it. I was teacher of the year for my district. I was receiving some anti-queer kind of like comments and whatnot,
Mm,
and I didn't feel like I had a community to connect with. Um, and so I started looking for podcasts because I had recently gotten into podcasting and I like to listen to like educational podcasts,
mm-hmm.
because teachers, we're workaholics. So,
Yes.
driving home, listening to how to be a better teacher. And, and so I was looking for podcasts where, there were queer teachers and there were none. And so I said, you know what? If one doesn't pop up in the next year, then I'm going to create one. And then nothing popped up. And so I created one. And what I'm realizing now, because I've kind of had conversations with people where they've, specifically my mom has been like, I just wish you would just be quiet. Like, she's worried about physical harm. And I totally
Mm-hmm.
understand that. She's like, I just
Mm-hmm.
wish you would be quiet. And I'm like, here's the thing though, people are actively silencing queer teachers right now. When you go and you watch the news, it isn't the queer teachers you're hearing about, it's the people talking about them. So
Exactly.
literally, we don't have any power in the narrative. And so my goal with this is just to make sure we are never fully silenced, that there is always a space where we can raise our voice and say, we are here and here are our stories. And so that's kind of how my answers evolved, is like
Mm-hmm.
the purpose and the meaning behind this podcast is honestly to provide a space where people can't tell us we don't exist. Because the biggest trouble that the society has right now for minorities is that with white supremacy and capitalism playing out in patriarchy, their biggest goal is to make you feel isolated and alone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel isolated and alone, and you feel isolated and alone, and this person over here feels isolated and alone, and this person over here feels isolated and alone, that you're never gonna rise up and
Mm-hmm.
voice a loud enough opinion to matter. And so my goal is to just let people know, to be like the rainbow flare in the sky that says we are here in education, working everywhere to support
Mm-hmm.
children.
Yeah,
And
and
being queer does not change the fact of exactly what you said, that we are also the experts in the room.
everybody always likes to think that we're not, and I'm just like, excuse me, wait, I'm the one that went to school for this. I don't know where you're coming at me for, but it's true, and I think a lot of parents sometimes when they find out, like if their teacher is queer, they think, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, blah blah blah. But it's like, so what? It's not affecting your daily life. I'm just the teacher. I'm just trying to help your kid succeed in life and become a great human being. Like,
That's the
that's
thing that
all.
gets me is I my 9-year-old's word of the week or month is audacity, which I love. She's like, the audacity of that look you just gave me. And, but I just sit here going like, the audacity of parents to be treating teachers the way that they are, when my parents wouldn't want to have a conversation unless it was required. Like, if
Mm,
unless there was a
mhm,
true injustice happening, they would be having a conversation with me, not with my teacher. And it's so
mm.
funny to me now because I think that the immediate response is like, what did your teacher do?
Truly, it really is. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, what? What did I do?
It's like,
You're like, no.
I'm the adult in the room, right? Like,
Yeah, I,
yeah.
yeah, I definitely had that before too. So I'm like, yeah.
Well, Annabelle, thank you so much for coming on the episode today. I've really enjoyed it. Annabel Flemate, because
There you
you corrected me,
go.
and I
Que
love it
bueno,
because
que bueno.
I'm learning Spanish right now. I use like,
Oh, awesome.
I'm a Duolingo person, and so I just like practice it every day. But my daughter was in dual language, so we talk to each other with only people in the house that are like
No,
talking to each other.
That's great. Practice is key. Don't stop
Yeah.
that. It's gonna help her.
Yeah, it's gonna help me too.
Yeah,
Sometimes she's like, "You're saying that wrong, Dad." And so I just really enjoyed our time, and I love that you work with pre-K because I think that the representation is so important, and it needs to happen all across the realm. We shouldn't have to wait until high school to see a queer person living
Exactly.
and thriving, and to see
Mm-hmm.
queer joy happening. So
True.
thank you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. You have inspired me just by this podcast, to be honest, and you are going to shape so many people's lives, Brian. I don't even think you realize. But thank
Oh,
you
thank
for
you.
having me on, and I really appreciate it.
I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate
No
it. And thank
problem.
you
Have a
all
good
for
one.
listening. Have a
Oh
great
yeah,
day,
thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Teaching While Queer. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Leave a review, and that would help out tremendously. You can also support the podcast by going to www.teachingwhilequeer.com and hit support the show. Thanks so much, and have a great day.